What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Breaking Bet. It's been a good first couple weeks of college baseball. I think a lot of us are just happy the sport is back in general, but we're looking at the first 2 weeks. There was a lot of good games. There's good matchups, but I think people betting on it, myself included, can agree that there wasn't that many great matchups in general. There really were not too many bettable matchups. Felt like we had to force some plays and maybe get into some stuff that we wouldn't have gotten into because of a light slate. No such thing tonight. Lines drop relatively early. Credit to DraftKings. Not only did they drop a ton of great matchups for this week early, but they gave out run lines and totals, didn't make us wait. Round of applause for DraftKings. Join with me, as always, my guy John Bowman, ready to break down a monster Friday night slate on the College Diamond. What's good, JB?
Yeah, man, you said it. I mean, tons of lines, tons of totals, which I honestly can't even remember the last time we got totals the night before. Usually it's late, at least the day of, and if not, a couple hours before games start. So there's a ton to get into today.
Brother, I truly cannot wait. I am so excited. When I tell you, I felt like a kid in a candy store. Like, we're not just getting lines, we're getting a ton of lines, and we're getting the full meat and potatoes. And I gotta say, I wish we're getting the team totals a little earlier. That's the next thing. And after the first weekend, it looks like they kind of did away with the innings. You could bet first inning run line, money line. You can bet first 3, first 5, which is a market that a lot of us were dying for. First 7. Hopefully they bring that back, because I think there's quite a handful of matchups that I wouldn't want to take full game, but I would really like to dive into that first 5 market. My guy Sunday Puncher 2009. What's good, baby? We're getting it today, brother. We're getting it today. It's going to be a big one for tomorrow. I can't wait. Can't wait to do nothing but watch college baseball all day. As we do every week, before we get down to the slate, we go over the expectations. For week 3, what are you feeling for expectations?
I mean, we've got a lot of rivalry matchups, right? And those are always fun. Literally anything can happen in those series. You could see a sweep one way, you could see a road sweep. And then a couple of the games, they're at neutral locations as well. It switches around. So, we've got a lot to get into today. There are a lot of interesting matchups and tons of lines on the board.
Yeah, I think for me, I would like to see how some of these teams that have started out hot, that have tougher games. Like, for instance, we'll get into it towards the end of the show, Tennessee versus Oklahoma. That's part of an awesome Astros Foundation Classic. There's 6 really good teams. There's going to be a ton of good matchups this week. And, Tennessee's been killing teams the first 2 weeks. Typical top team, got some layups. But now they're going to face stiffer competition. How do they look? Are they going to continue putting up 25, 30 runs on these teams, or is it going to be due for regression? That's what I'd like to see. And another thing, I'm very curious how some of these teams are going to do as it pertains to travel. So there are more than a handful of good teams that have to do a long-distance travel. Vanderbilt has to go to UCLA. Tough place to play. We know Vanderbilt typically hasn't been the best on the road this year. We have Nebraska and ULL. I'm not sure if that's part of a tournament this weekend, so I do apologize. And you know what? It's not. I don't think it's not the Frisco. It might be the Frisco, but there's some teams that have to get out there on the road this weekend. So I'm curious to see about that. But what about the biggest underdog? We've been doing pretty good with this, giving out those big underdogs that are the plus 200 or bigger range. Do you have any? I know you haven't done your full deep dive yet since the lines just came out like 10 minutes ago, but do you have something that you're looking at right now where you're like, wow, this big dog could be on upset alert?
Yeah, so a couple ones that I was looking at. The biggest one that I was looking at is Northwestern against Duke. I mean, Duke is
Why
at
did I know
home.
you were going to say that? Why did I know you? Because I was feeling that myself. I was going to say the same thing. Northwestern is a plus 260 dog at Duke, who's just almost a $4 favorite.
Yeah, which is, people keep thinking that Duke's going to finally show up, finally go back to that other team. But I think a big thing is losing both midweek games. Like that is, teams don't do that, especially at home. Good teams definitely don't do that. I think that's a good look. Another one that I'm looking at is Ohio State plus 160 against Auburn. Like I'm a big Auburn guy this year. I think they're going to take, many steps forward from last year. I think they're going to be a solid team, but we've seen Ohio State stick with these really good teams. And, it's really been their bullpen that's let them down for the most part. But, first game of the weekend, you've got everybody available. So if they're going to win and if their bullpen is going to perform, I think it's around there. And then.
No, all right. Save some for me. You already went two.
I was going to lead you into the next one. I was going to say, we were talking about this earlier, is UCLA against Vanderbilt.
We're previewing that game later. We'll get to the preview. Got to make everybody wait a little bit. Just, you can't give it all away. Gotta ease them into it. I do agree with those looks that you had. I will say a team that is getting a lot of money as a dog that I'm interested is against a full-on no bet list team for me right now. It's not a season long. Oregon State really did me dirty this week, and they cost me a lot of money. They cost me what could have been a great weekend and just made it a good weekend last week. Still up over 3 units, close to 4, I think. I don't have it off the top of my head. But I'm taking a backseat on the Beavers right now. It's not season long. They have a lot of talent. I expect them to get it together. But the way their offense left a ton of runners on base, their defense made errors, their bullpen got lit up, they're walking too many guys, just not executing. I can't bet them right now. I'm going to take the weekend off from the Beavers, maybe next week, and let me reassess, because I like to do a reeval after each week and take it from there. But the Beavers, definitely for this weekend, absolutely no bet list. If they continue to go with Nelson Keljo, which I'm not 100% sure that they are, I have to double check, they're hosting Baylor this weekend. Baylor is not a team I thought was going to do very well in the Big 12 this year, but they've gotten off to a pretty good start. And plus 240 at a team that's kind of scuffling right now, and a team that I like Nelson Keljo. I think he's good, but he's not their best starter. I think he's probably their third best starter right now behind Dax Whitney and Ethan Kleinschmidt. I think Baylor could be taking one this weekend, and they're getting a big price. And even if you don't like the plus 240, you're getting 3.5 runs. Now's the part where you comment if you like that or not.
I'm sorry if I keep looking over this way. It's because I'm checking out my board. Like we said, there's so many games that I've got to look up and down for the games that I have written down. But Baylor has gotten off to a good start. I don't know how good they are, really. I think it's very tough to see early in the season with these teams that weren't necessarily supposed to be good and haven't played a ton of competition yet. Oregon State looked amazing the first weekend. I honestly thought they were one of the best teams in the nation. And then last weekend they looked awful, barely top 25. So those teams are pretty tough to bet on. I don't mind them in a parlay, but I think there are definitely other parlay pieces that are better there.
Yeah, I can't do it. This one's at Globe Life Field, so it's on Flow Sports. Listen, Oregon State is a team that I just feel is going to be a good parlay piece pretty much throughout the season. But I think right now what I'm going to be doing is just kind of taking it week by week with them, because we know they have the talent. It's just the fact as kind of like Virginia, you're not capitalizing when you have the opportunities. And when you don't do that, that is just a recipe for disaster and letting these teams like Minnesota hang around with you. Like off a loss against the Sooners on Saturday night, where your bullpen got lit up by an offense that's really not that good. Sunday was a prime bounce back spot. And what do? You got bombed by a team that probably won't even make the NCAA tournament. And you know what? Baylor, by the way, has got a pretty good lefty pitcher going in Ethan Calder, who's off to a tremendous start. Only allowed 1 run and 1 walk in 12 innings thus far. Granted, it's not against that kind of competition, but I think we can look into it. Is what I'm saying. We can look into it. But let's get into our first matchup here. The Dallas Bombers at Oral Roberts. DBU laying that big number here. The days of Ryan Johnson are gone. Their best pitcher, James Ellwanger, usually goes on Saturdays. Oral Roberts was scrappy, though. They played Arizona State tough at ASU. They were down 4 runs on Friday against Ben Jacobs, who threw okay. 5 innings, 11 strikeouts, 3 runs for 3 solo home runs. And they got to the bullpen, and they fought and they clawed, and they were able to scrape out a win against, my opinion, the best pitcher in the Big 12. What do you feel about DBU here?
Yeah, so this is an interesting matchup. Like you mentioned, Oral Roberts just played Arizona State. They won that first game of the series, and then the second 2 games, they, didn't play as well. The third game, I believe, they ended up just losing late. But Oral Roberts at home, DBU, coming off that loss midweek against LSU, I think they're going to be a solid team this year, but we really don't know how good DBU is going to be. They haven't played any competition whatsoever, like not even anyone close. I mean, besides LSU, and we were able to see a little bit from them. They had, I believe it was 2 home runs that were absolute tanks, but that was all they're scoring the entire game. And LSU does, they're going to have some flamethrowers. They've got a good pitching staff. But Oral Roberts back at home plus 150, I think that's good value there. I would expect DBU to be, I would have thought that they would be closer to minus 160, minus 175. So I think that's a little high for DBU.
Yeah, and what I'm getting at is DBU, a lot of people might think, this is a parlay piece this week. Chances are, I think, at least 1 or 2 of the games this weekend, it will be. But Friday night, man, I don't know. I think I would wait till tomorrow to back DBU when they got Ellwanger on the mound. Oral Roberts, listen, man, I watched this. I watched all of ASU's games this past weekend. Oral Roberts is tough, dude. They're no slouch, and obviously they made the College World Series a couple of years ago. That team is not this team, but they still have some talent there. So I don't know if I'd be running to the window to back DBU straight. And I really don't know if I would consider this a parlay piece. It's definitely one where I can see Oral Roberts at home upset. And this is what I was alluding to before in my expectations. How do some of these better teams do on the road? Because there's a handful of them. And we know the feeling. Even though conference play hasn't started yet, typically a trend that I like to do is back the home teams on Friday nights. I feel like that probably does pertain a little bit more to conference play starting. But, I mean, when you have a top 25 team at a team that is very frisky, that's live to win at least 1 game in this series, I think, this is definitely a spot where I'm probably laying off Baptist altogether for game 1.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm going to echo you in terms of that home game thing. We've been talking about it all year. And then I agree with you. I think it's more so in conference play as well. You'll get the bottom of the conference teams at home against these better teams, and they'll end up winning at least 1, maybe 2 games in those series. But I think this is one where you look at Oral Roberts, they're probably going to win 1 game this series at least, right? So you play them game 1, you play them game 2 if they lose. If they lose both of the 2 games, you can probably play them game 3 and you come out minus a half unit, but they're more than likely to win one of those first 2 games as well. So I like Oral Roberts at plus money.
So you can get Oral Roberts at plus 1.5 at plus 114. So you're getting plus money, which is good. The thing is, though, like I said, I think with James Ellwanger on the mound tomorrow, that's probably where I would be looking at for Dallas Baptist. Like that's my game for them
on Saturday.
On Saturday. So if I was going with DBU, any game this week, it's going to be Saturday with their best pitcher on the mound. Micah Bucknam's been their Friday guy. He's been solid, but I mean, they haven't really played anybody, so the sample size is small. I mean, he was at LSU last year. Wasn't a guy that was really in the weekend rotation at all. So it's not something that I'm running to the window to back on him. I think DBU is a good team, and they're always one of the best mid-majors, but their roster is not as good as it was last year. It's still really good. They're still the Dallas Bombers, but it's last year was legitimate College World Series good. I don't know if I see that this year. They're definitely going to be due for some letdowns throughout the season, I think. Moving on here, we got the second game on our slate. That's Miami. This is the Florida rivalry series. Miami Hurricanes at the Florida Gators. Gators look good to start the year. They were a team I wasn't super high on. They weren't a preseason College World Series team for me, but they're still Florida. Kevin O'Sullivan, fantastic head coach, one of the best head coaches in all of the country. Gutley and Peterson looking phenomenal. Double-digit strikeouts, I believe, in his first two games against Air Force and Dayton last week. What are you feeling about the Gators going against a Miami team who is not really at the top of the ACC, who is in sort of a rebuild with Nick Robert on the mound, who's looked really good in his first two starts, assuming he goes? We haven't gotten full pitching matchups yet. I will preemptively say that.
Yeah, I mean, I this one came out a little higher than I thought. I thought Florida would be minus 175-ish in the rivalry matchup. Obviously, they're at home, and that's a big advantage in these matchups too. I still like Florida here, though, but it's getting to that point where I might have to parlay it with something. Maybe one of those heavy favorites, -4 something, maybe something like an Ole Miss against Wright State at home, maybe a UCSB at home against Fresno State to get it close to even money. But Florida, they're always good. They're always in the mix. They've got good pitching this year. A lot of guys that were very young last year are starting to mature. And like you said, Miami's not expected to be very good. They've got a couple of guys, but they also had a couple of guys transfer last year. So I think I would go with Florida here.
Yeah, listen, I think Florida is going to be a very good team. Throughout the year. When I say very good, I think they're going to be probably a few games over 500 in SEC play. But I don't know if it's a College World Series team. You lose Jack Caglione, but you have talent. You have Colby Shelton, you have Cade Curlin, Brody Donay's taking a step. You have a very good rotation. Now they move Pierce Capola to the Saturday role. Pierce Capola, North Jersey native, right in my neck of the woods. So love to see it, especially after all the injuries he's had. Listen, I would lean Florida here, but there's no way, especially against a team like Miami, who's an in-state rival that is going to play them tough. These series have always seemed to be wars. So I'm going to stay off them for the Friday game. I probably won't parlay them because Miami's got some guys. They got a kid by the name of Danny Cuvée. That kid is a certified baller. Top 5 2026 overall status in the draft, I would say. Kid's going to be a real threat for the Golden Spikes next year. He was a dog as a freshman. I think he had 25 home runs, cleared 360 average. Like the kid is legit. And they have some other guys. So I would probably say Florida, but I think game one, I'm going to stay off this. Side note, Blake Sear, revenge game. Too bad we don't have home run props. Otherwise, Blake Sear would be on it.
I also don't mind the under. I'll say that. I feel like both these bullpens, everybody rested, and two good starting pitchers.
Yeah, I think I'd probably lean that as well. Isn't it nice when we have totals in our breakdown? We can talk
it makes it a lot easier
instead of guessing what they would be, like we've done the first 2 weeks.
Exactly.
Southern Miss TCU, top 25 matchup. TCU getting a pretty big number here at minus 180 against Southern Miss, who they've looked pretty good. Do you think TCU is worth laying the minus 180 for right now?
This one is very interesting for me because I have been on the wrong side of TCU. TCU is the team for me so far that I've been on the wrong side the entire season so far. I thought San Diego was going to win at least one of those games, those 4 games at home, maybe 2. I ended up betting on them twice that series. They lost all 4 games, and then TCU starts playing in the Globe Life, one of those tournaments, and they ended up losing those last 2 games in that tournament when I finally ended up backing them. So I cannot get a read on them at all. I would have thought they were going to come out around minus 150 here. Southern Miss is always a good team, always a good program. So I'm probably just staying off this one. I think TCU would win, but that's a little heavy for me in terms of the odds.
I got to be honest. I think this is a coin flip series, and the odds don't reflect that. TCU is a good team. I didn't have TCU as my Big 12 winner. I thought they were going to be very competitive. And then you lose Ben Abelt. Ben Abelt's your Friday guy. Ben Abelt was probably going to have a real shot to win Big 12 Pitcher of the Year. It's a guy who could have been a first rounder this year. He was going to do the Gabe Gackle reliever / closer last year and then make the jump not only into the rotation, but the Friday guy, and you lose him, and that stinks. But, TCU is probably going to go with Caedmon Parker again, the guy who's thrown both Friday games against San Diego, 4 1/3, 3 earned, 3 walks against Michigan last week, 6 innings, 3 earned, which is good. But I mean, I don't know. Pitching advantage goes to Southern Miss here. JB Middleton's been very good. Granted, one of his games was against Lafayette, but against Louisiana Tech, who's no pushover, 5 shutty. I mean, this kid has yet to allow a run. He's got 10 Ks in 11 innings, only 4 hits allowed, 4 walks. I think it's definitely interesting here. TCU's offense, though, they've just not impressed me, honestly. And I didn't think it was going to be an offense that was going to be one to impress here. I would say, realistically, this might be a Southern Miss or pass look for me. I think if you're getting Southern Miss, sorry, I'm trying to find it, scroll through a million games. But if you're getting Southern Miss at plus 1.5, I think that might be worth a look. Otherwise, I feel like the total at 11's a little high, but laying 180 with TCU, an offense that has not really whacked. They scored 2 runs against Kansas State on Sunday. They scored 1 against Arkansas. Yeah, they blew up Michigan for 10. They scored 5 at San Diego the first game. Then they had a couple games where they blew up San Diego, who doesn't really have a ton of great pitching. But JB Middleton is good, man. He really is. I don't know if he's Tanner Hall good, who was the race for the last couple of years or before the season before, but I think the run line on Southern Miss is interesting.
Yeah. I also don't mind an under. Like you mentioned, TCU's not really hitting. The thing is, I had Southern Miss. I thought that was going to be an under midweek against Ole Miss after the 3-0 game against Mississippi State. Obviously, different park, more of a hitter's park. But at the same time, I think I would lean under there too.
Yeah, I think that's probably where I would look at. Not loving it. A couple comments. How do you guys feel about the West Coast teams? I've noticed a lot of unders with these teams early on. That's a good perception because I've noticed a lot of the same thing as well for most of them, except for Irvine, who just seems to be hitting the shit out of the ball. But,
without their best player too.
Yeah, I don't know when Anthony Martinez. Maybe this is the week Anthony Martinez comes back. But we're going to get a little bit more into those games as the show goes on. So don't fret. We will get there. And our guy Crutch, big friend of the show. What's up, Crutch? Southern Miss or nothing. I do agree, especially at the price. If this was a coin flip price where it was like minus 130 versus even money, maybe I would consider TCU. But laying 180 with honestly what's probably not a pitching advantage for the Horned Frogs, I don't know. I don't think so. All right. Here it is. The first true East versus West game. The Vanderbilt Commodores, a very large minus 188 price, traveling out to UCLA. J.D. Thompson, a guy who preseason I said I believe is a top 5 pitcher in the country. He could be a top 5 college arm off the board this summer. He was good against Grand Canyon on opening night in the Desert Invitational. I don't think he was great. I think he was missing his spots. He loaded the pitch count a little bit too much, wasn't as efficient. But his final line was good. I think he pitched good overall. Against St. Mary's last week, I was really not impressed. He was missing spots early. The command was erratic. J.D. Thompson is that guy. He certainly is. Left-hander, might be the best left-hander in the class potentially. I think Thompson is a guy that I would firmly look at backing almost every Friday night. But the fact is, and this is where this is what we've mentioned the first couple weeks of this show. The travel could be a problem here. You have to fly from Nashville to LA against a UCLA team that I don't think is that good, but they have some guys. They have a guy who could be a first-round shortstop, Rock Chalowski. Their pitcher is probably going to be Cody Delvecchio, who he hasn't been great to start the year. I don't think I'm laying Vandy at this price, even with J.D. Thompson on the mound.
Yeah, I'm with you here. I think I like UCLA in this one. Vanderbilt was notoriously bad on the road last year. J.D. Thompson not at his sharpest. UCLA, I don't know too much about their bullpen. I haven't really gotten any chances to actually watch them, but they've got good numbers from box score watching, especially against Arizona State these past couple games. And we know Arizona State's got a solid lineup. So I like UCLA at plus money here. The thing that Vanderbilt's been doing is they keep going down to these teams, right? And then their bats are just so hot that they're able to battle back. They're able to take these games. That's not going to be sustainable, especially with teams that have solid bullpens. So I think at some point they're going to get burned. And on the road, on the West Coast, I feel like that's a very good opportunity. I think this is great look for UCLA at home.
Yeah, I do. Listen, Vanderbilt to me is definitely a team that is capable of being had. I think Wags makes a good point. I hate betting against a guy like J.D. Thompson. A UCLA team is okay. I don't think they're that great, but I think the run line here, 1.5 at -125 at home, is something worth looking at. So Vanderbilt Friday night at least is off my card. Listen, if J.D. Thompson goes out there 6 shutty, 10 Ks, just puts the hammer down on UCLA and they win by 6 or 7, I'm not going to be surprised. That's what you expect when you're laying a number this big. It's just, like you said, Vanderbilt on the road could be a little questionable. They didn't look fantastic in the Desert Invitational. They played some scrappy teams, but they didn't look fantastic. So I think I am passing at least today. So yeah, Sunday Puncher, UCLA bats, they got some guys. Sub to the Discord today. Looking forward to sweating it out with you. Appreciate you, Dilly Daggers. I saw you join today, my friend. Let's ride the season. Let's have a big one. Let's move on here. This is part of, I want to say Texas is in, you know what? There's like 6 different tournaments, so bear with me. I do apologize. But Texas is a monster favorite against Washington in the Las Vegas Classic. That's what it is. So the Longhorns were a team I really like coming into the year, John. They were a preseason Omaha team. Jim Schlossnagle is a fantastic coach. Yeah, everybody hates him because he left A&M in the lurch after the loss. But not only does he go to Texas, but he brings his maybe the best pitching coach in the country, if not one of the top 2 or 3 in Max Wiener. And already Max Wiener's got this rotation humming. The bullpen is humming. Jared Spencer, transfer from Indiana State, has looked fantastic. Luke Harrison in the Saturday roles look good. Ruger Riojas, there's Thomas Burns from ASU. A lot of these bullpen arms look good early. Washington might be going with Max Banks. I got to confirm that, who did well against Kansas State opening weekend. And this kid is good. And I will say, I wasn't impressed by Texas's offense this weekend. Dartmouth held them in check. Dartmouth was threatening, I think, in all 3 games, even though the Horns got the sweep. But I still like Texas here, man. Texas, this game should be indoors. We saw what they did in Globe Life. Got my boy Max Bailu, one of my key 3 Golden Spikes picks. He's ripping. He's up to one of the top favorite statuses right now. This kid's batting over 5. He's batting over 530. I think Texas is in a parlay piece here. We're not laying a $3 favorite, but I like Texas in a parlay piece.
Yeah, I'm with you here. I don't think there's too much needed to be said. You hit on pretty much everything. I think Texas, on the money line, they're the way better team. I don't think Washington's very good. They haven't gotten off to a good start. I like Texas here.
Any thoughts on a 14.5 total?
these Las Vegas games are really hard to handicap with these totals, right? The ball usually travels, and usually there are a lot of high totals. That's why we see a 14.5 even on a Friday night. This is one I'd probably stay off totals for the most part in this series. Maybe go with some overs later in the weekend, but I think the lines are going to be 16.5, 17.5. So, it's obviously tough to play those lines.
Yeah, I think there's probably also mercy rules in this one too. So if Spencer goes out there and just dots them up and Texas puts up an 11 spot and they're up 11-1 after 7 innings and it's a mercy rule, then, you get hosed. So I think 14.5 is tough. I would probably look at Texas's team total when that comes out, which I would probably think is closer to tomorrow morning. I would be interested if Texas's total is, I would say the cutoff point for me is probably 8.5 against Washington. I would think about taking that over in a ballpark where the ball should fly against a team like Washington. They have a lot of bats in their lineups. They're hot right now. So I think that's probably where I'd look. The totals are for the week are coming. So we're going to data points myself. There we go, Wags. Yeah, agree. Under 14 Washington. Can't really hit. It's just it's tough. So team total is probably where I'd look at, but we have to wait to see that. Xavier at Stanford. Matt Scott. Xavier hung with Oregon State opening weekend. They were good for the first half of the game, and then until the Beavers broke it open. Xavier struggled against Liberty. They did come back, I think, on Sunday. Liberty had a decent lead, and the bullpen just collapsed. But that's Liberty. This is Stanford. Stanford's got a great Friday night guy in Matt Scott, who could be a first rounder this year. They have some bullpen pieces. They can score a little bit, even though their offense probably isn't as good as it was in the more recent years. Stanford, a parlay piece for you, confidently?
Yeah, and I mean, these are two teams that I've been talking about for a while. I was the biggest Stanford hater. These past couple of years, it seemed like if these series, it seemed like at home they'd win one of these 3 games. They'd get off to bad starts. They'd blow big leads, just about everything. This year seems very different for them. It seems like the Stanford of a couple of years ago that ended up, doing well in the postseason. But I like Stanford at home here. I'm not a big East guy. I'm very low on teams like UConn, which maybe we get into one of those that matchup later tonight. But these Big East teams that travel across the country as well and get to California. Stanford, like I said, I'm pretty high on them. They're ace going. They've been very good to start this season. I like them at home.
Yeah, I do too. I gave out a couple picks already in my Discord. Stanford was in there with a parlay. Matt Scott. I mean, listen, honestly, I get agita betting Stanford. There's few teams more than Stanford. I get anxiety when I bet because they have the matchup advantage, and sometimes they just seem to collapse. And yeah, they played a relatively easy schedule so far, but I get nervous because, I mean, 1 week against Cal State Fullerton, their offense explodes, but their pitching towards the end of the weekend was not good. But then last weekend against Washington, their pitching was okay to probably good, but their offense was quiet for most of the game. It took a couple big innings for them to make the score look a little bit more lopsided than it was. But I think this is a Stanford play all the way for me, man. Listen, if Matt Scott and Stanford lose on Friday night at home against Xavier, so be it. But this is why you got to put some confidence behind these plays. Let's ride the Cardinal here. Should be the Cardinals, by the way. I hate saying the Cardinal. Like when I'm talking about it in plural, like we're talking about the Cardinal, it should be the Cardinals. When I first started watching college baseball, I kept calling them the Cardinals, and it's like, no, it's the Cardinal. I was like, really? What about if I'm referring to them as plural? Like, whatever. Auburn at Ohio State. Let me just say, Ohio State has become the new Campbell. If you are familiar with the sport and you're familiar with Campbell, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, the Camels, a team that 22 and 23, I've taken a swing on some big shots with them to win the College World Series. because their offenses were loaded. They had so many guys. I mean, Zach Neto, for Christ's sake, was their anchor on offense in 2022, and he was a top 15 pick for the Angels. They had an ace by the name of Thomas Harrington. They have an ace by Cade Cooler a couple years ago. And let me say, their offense can hang with anybody. By the end of the year, their offense was top 10 in basically every major category. It was insane. But their downfall was their pitching. Outside of a couple studs in Harrington and Cade Cooler, they really didn't have much by the way of additional weekend starters. They didn't have bullpen guys. Justin Hare, their coach, left to go to Ohio State. Ohio State looks exactly like this Campbell team. They can hit the shit out of the ball, and they can't pitch. Case in point, on Sunday against Alabama, they jump out to a 10-0 lead, and they end up losing. This team is going to score a lot of runs this year. This team is probably not going to win that many games, but they are going to be fun to watch, and they're going to be fun to bet on, mainly in the point of overs. And they're hosting an Auburn team that's looked good so far. A couple people, Crutch, shout out to you included, had them as a very dark long shot to make the College World Series. Pitching has been a big problem. Looks like maybe it's a little better this year. This total is too low. 11 runs. Samuel Basallo is going for Auburn tomorrow night. He was a guy that pitched a little bit at LSU. I think this total should probably be like 13.5, 14. I think 11 is way too low. 11 over is an official play for me. If it's a pitcher's duel, so be it. But we have two offenses that can score at will. I think, honestly, this score could end up being 15, 16 runs, John.
Yeah, so I touched on this game, obviously, earlier in our show. This is one of the teams, Ohio State, that I think is a good look with plus money. We've seen them. Everybody agrees. We've seen their bats go off. It's really been their pitching that's been the big thing for them. And I think they're a better team at the beginning of the weekend, Fridays, Saturdays, because their pitching just falls off a cliff. Like you said, we saw that against Alabama and them giving up that massive lead. So I think if you're going to play Ohio State, it's got to be earlier in the weekend when they have all their bullpen pieces available. Auburn, I'm high on. I think they're going to be a good team this year. I think they're going to take massive steps from last year. But Ohio State at plus 160, I just think that's a great look, the way that they've been hitting and the fact that they will have every single reliever available.
I'm not laying 210 with Auburn anyway. So it would be Ohio State for me or pass if we're talking about a money line here. But let me read to you the scores of Ohio State's games this year. 17 runs game opening day against Arizona State. 13 runs game 2. 27 runs game 3. 11 runs against NC State, first game of Jacksonville College. 10, 8, and 11 innings 18 runs against Coastal in 11 innings. 22 runs against Alabama. I mean, this is what we're dealing with here. It's just nuts. And this is part of that 2025 college baseball series in Arlington. So while I do agree, and this is the harder part to handicap, the total is this game is being in a professional ballpark that has, I think Noah Beanick said, the third worst batter advantage. So those balls that are flying out in most ballparks aren't going to fly, but I don't think it's going to matter. These two teams rake. I mean, the fact is, you look at Auburn last week. They put up 15 against Samford in the midweek. They put up 9 against Wright State Sunday, 11 against them in 7 innings on Saturday, 11 against Wright State on Friday. They put up 14 on Sunday against Holy Cross opening weekend. And the first 2 games weren't good. They put up 4 and 2, but we know the Tigers can mash, dude. I think 11 runs, even in the major league ballpark, is a little too low here. But I do agree. Ohio State is probably the play for me. If I was going to go on a money line, which I think I'm just going to stick with the total. And I like that it's not a half. So if it ends, if this game at any point is 5-5, you're good. You're not, at worst, you're pushing. Nebraska. All right, hold on. Let me fix this. I don't know what the hell that is. Apologies. We got Nebraska and Mason McConaughey against Sam Houston and Ryan Parker. Nebraska, top 25 team on the road against a pesky mid-major in Sam Houston. Is this number too big to take Mason McConaughey, who shoved down at ULL last weekend against Chase Morgan?
I think so. Mainly, we were talking about earlier about these road teams, right, that should win these games, but they haven't these past couple of years. I don't think Sam Houston's very good at all. A couple of years ago, they used to be a serious live dog, but they haven't been good lately. Nebraska, we've seen them all year either show up or not. They're either looking like they should or they look awful. So, I mean, I would lean Nebraska here on the road, but minus 188 is a little heavy for me, and I don't like that in a parlay piece because we've seen them play some duds. So I'm just staying off this game altogether.
Yeah, I think I tweeted out last week that I'm going to have this relationship with Nebraska all year. One game, they look great. They look every bit of that top 25 status. They look like a team that is going to win the Big Ten, which, by the way, I did preseason bet Nebraska to win the Big Ten. And another game, they're just not even going to show up. They're not even going to get off the bus. Mason McConaughey is why I'm betting this. It's an official play. Nebraska money line minus 188 at Sam Houston. They have the pitching advantage. Their offense is decent enough. I agree it's a big price, and I don't like doing this. And I know there's going to be those games where it's a dud. It happens. But I feel like most times, more times than not, you're betting a really good Friday night guy. It's a good play. And you're paying less than $2. I got to do it. I think we got to do it. So Nebraska, and by the way, Sam Houston isn't anything special. They're not the team they were last year or 2 years ago. Let's see what happens. Cornhuskers. Let's move on here. A lot of games. Oh my God, we still got 6 more games, including this one. Minnesota at Arizona State upset the Beavers on Sunday, much to my chagrin. ASU, we're getting into this habit here early on where we're laying anywhere from $2 to $2.50. Minus 238 against Minnesota, who is a little feisty. Parlay piece with Ben Jacobs?
I think so. I mean, we saw Minnesota, their pitching was unbelievable last weekend, and they're not supposed to be good. It's not a great program, but they've got some pitchers somehow, and that's usually what lacks in these programs, especially these northern programs and, these programs that can't really compete or haven't been competing. That being said, I think I do like Arizona State in a money line parlay. They didn't have the best showing midweek. They lost to UCLA the first game. They did win the second game 2-0, but it's not like their bats were lighting it up. They won 2 of those 3 games at home against Oral Roberts. I know you're really high on Arizona State. I do think they'll win this game. I do think it'll be a parlay piece, but I don't think this is one of my favorite parlay pieces.
ASU's a team I picked to win the Big 12 this year. I love ASU. I think they're a dark horse for Omaha if that bullpen gets under control. That's the problem for me is ASU's bullpen, and their weekend rotation looks good, man. You got Ben Jacobs, who I don't have any problems with or any concerns about season long. I think he's going to be the Big 12 pitcher of the year. I think this kid is a first rounder this summer if he continues to throw well. Jack Martinez on Saturday, solid. I mean, Jaden Alba did fantastic against Oral Roberts on Sunday. The kid shoved. I was expecting a 30-run game between the two of them, and it wasn't even close. Like, this didn't even hit the total. I gave out the total at 16.5. ASU's offenses look good. They look good early, but I think they're going to look a whole lot better in a month. Like, when we're talking about them next month, we're going to be like, wow. I think this is a top 10 offense in the country. By the end of the year, when they rank top 10 in most major categories, we're going to be like, wow, Arizona State can hit. And that's the thing that's going to carry them. But the pitching can supplement. In this game in particular, I like to ride, like I said, the aces almost every time. Ben Jacobs is an ace. I don't think Minnesota's that good. Their pitching has been impressive. I will admit that. But traveling at ASU, with an offense like the Sun Devils have, with a pitcher like the Sun Devils have, I like it in the parlay piece. I like ASU here. Any thoughts on the total 13.5?
I mean, Arizona State, their bats haven't been great so far, but it seems like they always wake up at home. The ball flies in Arizona, and they love playing at that park at home. But, the way that Minnesota's been pitching and with Arizona State's ace on the mound, 13.5 seems a little high. I'd probably just stay away from the total altogether.
Well, their offense has been ripping in the weekend series, though. They scored 33 against Ohio State, and they scored 28 against Oral Roberts last weekend.
Yeah.
At home again, dude, I think they play 7 Big 12 series this year. 4 of them are at home. So they have an advantage there. And I want to say all of their games until maybe their second weekend series and like a midweek against Arizona. Maybe I think their second series might be against Arizona, actually. It's Arizona. I think it's at home, but pretty much all of their games are at home until conference play starts, except for like a couple, which is nuts. Buy ASU, guys. By the way, buy Brandon Compton Golden Spikes. I gave him out when he was at 75-1 on Caesars. They recognized the mistake, even though they only let me bet $13 on it. And when we got done from the weekend, he was 20-1, but he's still 30-1 at Bet Rivers. I think that's too long. Chances are he probably put like $35 on it because that's what they'll limit you to. That's what they did for me. But I got my Brandon Compton Golden Spikes position. The kid is awesome. The kid is a freak. He's going to be one of the top players in the country by the time the year's over. This kid is legit. All right, we're getting to the big boys now. Texas A&M in that Houston Classic down in Minute Maid Park. $2 favorite against Arizona. Arizona's on the no bet list for me. Sure, they look good against San Diego, but it seems like they're a turnstile. Everybody has. Arizona was really bad in the opening weekend. It was disgraceful how they showed up. Now I think they're probably feeling themselves a little bit in juice. Oh, hey, we swept San Diego. Now we're ready to run with the Bulls. A&M has been scuffling a little bit. Lose Gavin Krahovac, that's a big loss for the sport, for the team. A&M's a team that I gave out as one of my big College World Series picks. So they're going to have to find a way to replace him. I think they were leading Caden Kent off, who did pretty well in the midweek. They lost to Texas State. For anybody in my Discord, it wasn't an official play, but it was a lean. Texas State, as a big dog, was a live play. I think Texas A&M is going to win this. This is a parlay piece. I think the Aggies are going to get it together. I think, honestly, you need some struggles like this sometimes. All the expectations the Aggies had coming into the year, they're the best team. They're the best team in the country. They're the best team maybe since 2022 Tennessee. This is a wrap. They got it. They have this. They have that. It's sewn up. Nobody else showed up. The first weekend they looked good, but they struggled against Cal Poly, and they struggled in the midweek. This is where they can build some momentum if they can turn it around. And they have the guy on the mound to get that started, Ryan Prager. Ryan Prager was one of the best pitchers in the country last year. The kid is going to be, same deal, one of the best pitchers in college ball this year. Texas A&M, man, parlay piece against Colin McKinney and those Arizona Wildcats. I like it. And by the way, Arizona's offense does really – they do most of their damage against right-handed pitchers, especially considering the Wildcats offense. 2 best players, Brendan Summerhill, Mason White, are both lefties. A&M rolling out 3 lefties this weekend. They're going to face the best one, Ryan Prager. Give me A&M.
I'm just staying away from this game, to be honest. Both teams got off to miserable starts. A&M has not looked, I was also on them to win the College World Series and to make the College World Series, obviously, before the season. But they've gotten off to a terrible start. They lost Krahovic, like you mentioned. They just lost to Texas State at home midweek. Arizona didn't get off to a great start either. Even last year when they made that run, they got off to a tough start, and then it was kind of the end of the season where they just went on a roll and they carried that momentum into the conference tournament. and then into regionals a little bit. But yeah, I'm just staying away from this game. I would lean Texas A&M, but minus 200 is way too juicy for me for the way that they've been playing.
Yeah, no, I like A&M. I understand why you think that, and maybe I'm a little optimistic on their, this is where we start playing attitude, but I think A&M's going to wake up, man. I think when they wake up, it's going to be scary.
Yeah. I mean, sooner than later, they're going to figure it out. At some point, they're going to figure it out, kind of like UVA. They're going to be a team that figures it out. It's just when.
I think if this game was 180 or less, I'd probably play it straight. I'm not laying $2. Arizona, never know, man. But listen, the Aggies are a team that just has so much talent. They're going to figure it out. And like I said, sometimes you have to go through these early season struggles to find out what you're made of. Chase Lavalette, it's a good weekend for him to show out. That's all I'm saying. ULL, Chase Morgan, Friday night at UC Irvine. UC Irvine, again, is throwing Danny Suarez, probably piggybacking him with Ricky Ojeda, as they've been doing most Friday nights. Total at 10. Chase Morgan is a dog. Chase Morgan is probably one of the best mid-major pitchers, other than like maybe Tyler Bremner, maybe Jackson Flora. Like, I don't know if there's too many guys that put up over Chase Morgan, to be honest. Where are you feeling with Irvine here? Minus 180. They're at home. It's a cross-country trip. How do you feel about this?
Yeah, so I'm not too big on their pitching. They've gotten off to a brutal start. We saw that at Texas Tech too. It seemed like whatever pitcher they put in could not get outs. Granted, Texas Tech couldn't get many outs either, and UC Irvine ended up winning that series. But their bats are on fire to start this season. Yeah. And then ULL, like you mentioned, they're traveling across the country. They haven't gotten off to the best start. They played 2 midweek games too. So pitching is a little gassed. They probably ended up traveling today at some point across the country for this game. I like UC Irvine at home. Like I said, I don't trust their pitching, but I think their bats will carry them through this game. And ULL has not looked good to start the season.
Yeah, ULL ended up having a good series against Nebraska, though. Mason McConaughey outdueled them on Friday night, but then they came back to win the series. Typical Nebraska, right? Jekyll and Hyde is truly their embodiment. Here's the thing, though. UC Irvine is the better team, and with or without Anthony Martinez. But I can't stop thinking about Chase Morgan. Like, Danny Suarez does not do it for me on Friday nights. I don't know how this kid earned the Friday night role.
I agree with you.
I think the only way I'd really feel comfortable thinking about this off the top of my head is Suarez did okay through like 4 innings, and then Ojeda comes in and cleans it up for 3 or 4, because that's what's kind of worked for them. They can outslug against anybody, and I think if they can chase Morgan, then they're going to be in good shape. Minus 180 against a pitcher like Chase Morgan, though, even at home, is steep. That's a steep price. I don't know if I can lay flat out Irvine minus 180 though. I don't know. Like, they can hit. I know they can hit. But this kid Morgan is good, man. This kid Morgan is good. I probably would need more time to make a legitimate decision on this. I'm seeing Crutch talking about the over 10. I mean, 10 is a number that I'd probably look at. But I don't have anything on this one right now. I need to think about it a little bit more. I have a lot of time, especially if it moves. If Irvine gets blasted and they're minus 220, like an hour before game time, I think, or Sunday Puncher. Love the total of 10. Agreed. I think this is definitely possible. I want to see and think about it a little bit more as we get closer. Let's move down to the Frisco Classic with LSU against Kansas State. Kansas State, this was the inaugural no-bet list starter. K-State was brutal opening weekend, at least in the first game. It's not good. But they swept last weekend. I couldn't believe it. I honestly couldn't believe it. But, listen, they beat 2 ranked teams. They beat Arkansas. They beat TCU. Good on them. Now they're going against LSU. Neutral fields, Frisco Classic is usually pretty good. Are you afraid to put LSU in a parlay here? Do you think K-State's not getting enough respect?
The thing with K-State and what they played Washington that opening game, and it was at noon. I think the entire world was on Kansas State that game.
Yeah, I was.
The crazy thing is, looking back, you're like, how did they lose to Washington in that first game after this sweep of, playing really good teams over the weekend? So that's still mind-boggling. But I think if I were to play this game, I would go with Kansas State. Because that they can beat the best teams, but at the same time, we haven't seen them be consistent, and I'm not too high on them. And LSU, I think, is going to be a very good team. I also have them going to Omaha. I would lean Kansas State at this number. I don't like LSU in a parlay. I think that's a little much for me, but I think I'm going to end up staying off this game just because of how inconsistent Kansas State is and how we have no idea which Kansas State team will show up.
I don't think Kansas State is good, dude. I really don't. They have a couple good players, but I don't think they're good. I don't know where this pitching staff just showed out this weekend. It makes no sense to me how granted they went against Arkansas. Arkansas's offense isn't good, and TCU's offense isn't great. But LSU is a different animal. LSU is a top team in the country. If they take out LSU, then I'm really forced to consider stop betting against them, A, and B, maybe take them off my no bet list.
I'm with Crutch there. This game could be 11-1 or 5-4. I could not agree more.
I'm going with LSU. LSU is in a parlay piece. They're one of my big pieces that I gave out on my Discord. Kate Anderson's been pretty good. Their bullpen, this is why I picked LSU to be one of my key three win-it-all teams. Omaha team that was, along with A&M, 2-unit to win the SEC regular season. They have 8 arms. They're 8 arms deep, maybe more. Their offense is great. They have so many pieces. And the thing is, they haven't even truly gelled yet, but they look good early. I think LSU here, man. I do. And listen, if LSU blows this parlay for me, so be it. But I'm riding with the Tigers. They are a team that is going to be humming throughout the year. Tigers, enough said. Got a couple more here. Tennessee in Houston, Minute Maid Park, minus 200 against OK State. I will say I was taken back by this. I envisioned and I was hoping, I was thinking about the line because this game all week was probably one of the games I've been looking forward to most. I thought Tennessee would probably open at minus 160 to minus 166, no higher than 175. So to see them come out as a $2 favorite on a neutral field, I was surprised. Tennessee is a daddy wagon, no question about it. They've looked great, even though I don't think their team is as good as it was last year as national champion. Tony V runs a tight ship. Oklahoma State was a team I had some questions about coming into the year. Roster is great. That's why I didn't pick them to win the Big 12, especially at the price they were at. There's some holes in this roster. Gabe Davis looks like he's going to be going on against the Vols tomorrow. I should say plus 170. I apologize. Plus 170 is juicy on OK State. But the way Liam Doyle's been throwing, I don't know if I can get off that. I think I might have Tennessee in that parlay piece, but I can certainly understand if you want to go Oklahoma State at this number.
I like Tennessee in a parlay piece. Oklahoma State's gotten off to a terrible start. I believe this is the first time we've gotten a Tennessee line all season. And yeah, I mean, they're a great program. Oklahoma State hasn't gotten off to a good start, like I said. And a lot of times you see those teams, just like with Kansas State, these teams that got off to terrible starts. Well, I guess not like Kansas State in terms of having a lot of talent, but a team like Oklahoma State that has plenty of talent, they show up, against in these big games. So I still like Tennessee. I like them in a money line parlay, but
up to 220.
I would not be terribly. I would not be terribly surprised if Oklahoma State somehow shows up here.
Yeah, they're up to 220 now. Yeah, no, listen, I agree. I agree. And I think they're going with Gabe Davis, a guy who's their primary reliever, at least for the first couple Fridays, because he's their best arm. But I don't know how comfortable they feel with some of these other guys. Like Harrison Bodendorf, transfer from Hawaii, is talented. He's good. He's got good stuff, but he's not invincible. This kid, we've seen him lose the handle. We've seen him get hit a little bit. My guy Mario Pescia from St. John's, he's been solid here and there, but like he's been used out of the bullpen. He's been used on a Sunday game, or I think this is what they feel like. But the thing about OK State is they have high octane arms, and sometimes with high octane arms, things can go awry very quickly if you can't find the strike zone. But Tennessee's lineup is just too good to miss your spots on. I think Tennessee, I agree with you. Parlay piece, wouldn't be surprised if OK State pulls this one out, especially at a juicy price, but they're too inconsistent right now. I think the Pokes are a very good team, but I want to see how they do against Liam Doyle. Liam Doyle's been amazing to start the year. I don't think he's as good as he's pitching right now. I think a lot of it has to do with the obviously inferior talent that they've been facing. But going to Tennessee, typically you improve as a pitcher. Tennessee in a parlay piece. Last slated featured matchup here. Saved the best for last. Probably my second favorite game is the Palmetto series. I love when we get these every year. It is South Carolina against Clemson. Clemson is opening as a pretty sizable favorite. Minus 166 to South Carolina's plus 130. Looks like it's going to be Aiden Knock against Matthew Becker with a total that seems about on par at 10. I'll let you start this one off, John.
I like Clemson here. I mean, I think this series is always close. First of all, I'll say that pretty much any team can always win regardless of how good either team is. Obviously, these teams hate each other. And this starts in Clemson and then goes to a neutral park and then South Carolina, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I know it usually does.
It's like UNC ECU.
Exactly. And I think South Carolina won 2 of 3 last year, and I wasn't too high on that South Carolina team. Knock, it's pronounced Knock. I always say Knack.
I think it's Knock. Knock.
I'll say Knock then, but he's like a conundrum. He pitches. He has so many strikeouts, but then he's been getting lit up. And it's like one of those things where it seems like the hitters are just sitting on their pitch. And, if they don't get it, they're whiffing. But if they do, then it's going out. So I can never get a read on him. And then he's also a guy that his stuff really falls off. The first couple innings, first time through the order, it's nasty. Nobody can figure it out. And then he kind of just blows up, or at least he has so far. So I do like Clemson. That being said, I do still like Clemson on the money line, but I wouldn't be surprised with the South Carolina team. I'm not too high on them this year, but we always see them play this series close. I believe they won 2 of 3 last year. Need to double check that, but I think I like Clemson this one.
Yeah, I like Clemson this one. This is going to be another series that's a war. South Carolina's got some good pitchers, and it sucks because they lose their best arm, Eli Jersenbeck, who had a lot of draft juice. I don't know if he's going to be a first rounder, but he could have definitely been a second, if not a third. I would say he's probably going to go much higher than a third, though, somewhere in the second at least. But they're still good pitching-wise. They got Ethan Petrie, who's off to a great start. This is a guy who, for some reason, after the 2024 season, or heading into the 24 season, he was getting a lot of top 5 overall buzz. It was him and Jace Lavalette for number 1 overall. It was a little bit of a down season by his standards. It was still a good season overall. And then like Petrie coming into this year wasn't even mocked in the top 10 in a lot of these drafts. I didn't understand it. I don't know how many better players there are than Ethan Petrie, college eligible at least, even in overall in the country, than him. And I think Petrie is going to prove a lot of people wrong, get back into the top 10, possibly into the top 5. But in any case, I like Clemson here. This is one of my best plays. Aiden Knox got to get it under control. The stuff is great, but second time through the order has been an issue for him. But also let's remember he played against Oklahoma State in that first one where he was great to start and then things kind of fell apart. So let's remember that. It wasn't some D3 level school. Clemson in game 1, South Carolina game 3 at home, and I don't know. I'm going to do a little bit of research for game 2 and see how it goes. All right. We're finished with those. I know there's a couple matchups that you wanted to talk about. So give me the other matchups that you're looking at.
So Crutch actually mentioned it earlier. I love Hawaii against Northeastern. Northeastern, I forgot who they played, and they won a series. And it was actually an impressive series. But Hawaii's got to have the best home field advantage in college baseball. I mean, and that's not necessarily because of their field, right, or their fans. But you've got to travel all the way to that island. Then you also get there. If you're a player, you're a college kid, you kind of get there and you're feeling good. You know, I wouldn't necessarily say that they're going out and, getting drunk, but at the same time, you get there and you're kind of just enjoying the scenery. Hawaii's had good pitching to start this season. I like them at home, and I don't mind an under. I would have to check the Northeastern pitching staff, but I think it's a very good look for Hawaii in the money line.
I do too. I'm glad you brought that up. Hawaii, these late games, bows after dark is what they're known as. They're small price, minus 145 against a team in Northeastern, which by the way was like a super long shot for me last year.
Yeah,
that wasn't that good. They missed the tournament altogether. They lose a lot of their big pieces. And not only is the roster matchup an advantage, but they have to travel from the northeast of the United States to Hawaii. It's not northeast to like Miami or northeast to Nashville or even northeast to LA. That is to Hawaii. That is a crazy long flight. That's nuts. And there's no matchup advantage for them either. Hawaii at minus 145, I think by the time that closes, it's going to be closer to Hawaii minus 190, maybe pushing $2. So I'm probably gonna put Hawaii in as official play here momentarily when I get off, so I can get it on with the Discord. So great look by you, everybody in the chat here, talking about the Bows. At the 145, you're getting minus 150, and the way their pitching's been going, I think that's a really, really good look here. So good for you guys. There was a couple games I wanted to ask you about if I can find them. So apologies. Bear with me, por favor. Here it is. Nope. Oh, UCF minus 140 at South Florida. A smaller Florida in-state rival. Minus 140, presumably Dom Stagliano going. South Florida, another scrappy school. Would you lay the 140 with UCF, or would you take South Florida?
This one's tough for me because USF has been playing very well to start the season. Obviously, rivalry matchup, so anything can happen. UCF looked miserable midweek, and the way that they usually do it, they all try to hit bombs. They're terrible at small ball, and we saw that last year in one of these early series too. I forgot who exactly they were playing, but they just could not run the bases, and they could not, put bunts down and get around the bases. And we saw, I believe it was 4 straight innings when they were down 1 run. They got the leadoff runner on first base and couldn't get him over. One of them, it was a 3-1 count, and I believe it was 1 out, and they tried to steal second. This guy's totally lost the zone, and they're trying to steal second there. Just boneheaded things for me. Then there was one where they had a runner on first and second to lead off the inning, no outs. They pinch hit a freshman to try to bunt. The kid's running down the first baseline while he's trying to bunt. He gets down the bunt, but it's foul, and then he does it again, foul. It's like, it's a sacrifice bunt, dude. Just get it down. It doesn't matter where it goes. You're trying to make the most perfect bunt of all time. Just get it down. He ends up striking out. They don't score that inning. So I think I would lean USF, but this just depends which UCF team shows up, if they're going to end up hitting those bombs or not. But I don't think I'm laying UCF minus 140 on the road. If I play this, I think it would be USF, but I'm probably just staying off altogether.
Truthfully, Dom Stagliano, the Friday guy for UCF, it's not been that good to start the year. He's gotten touched a little bit. I like UCF long term. I think UCF is going to be a great team, but I was thinking about it like when I was looking and coming up with my plays. I'm like, UCF's been inconsistent a little bit to start the year. Dom Stagliano has been as sharp as I would have hoped for. And I like the Knights coming into the year. I felt they were a real challenger and a real dark horse to win their conference. Haven't seen it yet. I'm with you. I don't think I can lay the 140. To me, it's probably a stay away, but I wanted to hear your thoughts because I felt it was worth at least asking about. And by the way, I just added Hawaii as an official play on the money line for all my people in the Discord watching. Very good. So we're building out a nice slate here. What about Indiana against Stetson? Indiana's minus 130 at Stetson, even money.
Yeah, so I think we learned last weekend that Stetson isn't. We learned that in that Puerto Rico tournament that just none of those teams are very good. Michigan, Stetson, I believe, is UConn and someone else. But that's kind of what I learned these past couple weekends. Stetson's a solid team. These teams like Indiana, Illinois, the Big Ten, these teams that were solid last year, Iowa, have been terrible to start this season. And maybe it's, them being cold weather and not getting as many reps outside. But I think I would lean Stetson at plus money. I thought they would have been favored. I don't know if that's going to be an official play for me, but I would lean Stetson for sure.
I think so too. I think a lot of it, not official, but I think a lot of it has to do with what's going on with Jaden Hilton. Jaden Hilton got removed from a game last weekend. That's their best hitter. So I don't know what his status is. And I think if he plays, then I would be on Stetson. It's not official yet. I need a little bit more information on that. But I think that is right now something that I am definitely looking into is if he plays. John, any more games that we're interested in talking about? I mean, a lot of these are stayaways for me, but maybe something that catches your eye.
Nothing really. The only other two games I have written down are Wichita State minus 175 against Fullerton at home. Wichita State is a good pitching staff. I think that's worth the minus 175. And then USC on the money line minus 188 against UConn. Same idea. I'm not high on the Big East whatsoever. I'm not high on UConn. We saw them last year go to the West Coast to start the season and play terribly. They got off to an awful start. USC, I'm not terribly high on them, to be honest, but I believe they have a really good Friday night guy, and then it falls off on with Caden Aoki.
Caden Aoki, that's the guy who's back.
Okay, but so I think I like USC there more so because UConn's traveling across the country, and we've seen them not play well in that spot.
Our boy Crutch has a request here. Can we put up the 14.5 on Illinois, Texas Tech?
I also have that written down, Texas Tech on the money line at home. I think it's just fading these Big Ten teams. Illinois has looked terrible to start this season. Indiana, Iowa, none of them have looked great. And don't get me wrong, Texas Tech hasn't looked great either, but their bats were going off. And this game's at home for them, right? It's not part of a series.
Yeah, I think so. Let me just double check. Yeah, but I mean, Texas Tech, they're like Ohio State. They might be a big over team this year. TJ Pompey has been red hot to start the year. And by the way, they're going with Mac Hoyer as their Friday guy. He got touched.
I'm not a Hoyer fan whatsoever. He is not good. The thing is, they don't really have anyone else to go on Fridays. They can't really bump him back.
Lucas Perko is the new. He was in the rotation last weekend. He's actually okay. And they removed Jack Siebert from the rotation this weekend. It's going to be Zane Petty on Sunday. So, I mean, Illinois, I don't know, man. I think it could be another high total here for Illinois, Texas Tech. So, Crutch, I think the 14.5 is something that I would probably look into for sure. One more that I wanted to talk about at least. Gulf Coast against Georgia. At Georgia, Gulf Coast is a 250 underdog, 3.5 run line. Georgia laying basically $3.50. $350, I should say. Sorry. Do you think Gulf Coast is a team that can steal a win here this weekend?
No, I don't think so. They just got smoked by Miami midweek, like absolutely smoked.
That's what they do. That's their
Yeah,
thing.
exactly. But Georgia got off to that slow start against Georgia State and then came back and had a couple big innings. But Georgia has a very good Friday and Saturday guy. I think they take care of business at home.
Fair point. I just haven't loved the way Georgia's looked. I know they're out to a hot start and everything, but they've been letting a lot of these teams that are well inferior to them hang around for a lot of the games. Like they haven't blown many teams away. Like there's a lot of these games. I'm looking at Georgia. It's like 3-2 in the 7th inning, and they're going against Slapdick State, and they have to like rely on a big pull away. So it's not. Even though on paper it looks like Georgia's been dominating, they really haven't. Have not been impressed by Georgia. They've had a layup of the schedule to start. And Florida Gulf Coast, they're a frisky mid-major. Like this team is a team that historically, offensively, is good. So I think it was just worth, I felt like, us talking about. But side note, Texas Tech, that is in Las Vegas. That is part of that. That's part of that series. But that's going to do it for us tonight. I know we went a little long, but there was a lot of great matchups to talk about. So we appreciate everybody for tuning in. If you have not done so already, become a college baseball VIP member today. The first 30 subscribers get the season pass for $200, unlimited, full access to me. Definitely join the Discord. The link to my Discord is in my Twitter bio. We're doing really well so far, and we're going to just keep doing better. John, you're a true gem. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, I mean, as you guys can see on the screen, at John Bowman 11 on Twitter, X. You guys can check out my Dub Club there as well. But yeah, I mean, appreciate you having me on. A lot of games to talk about.
Yeah, of course, bro. Come on. You know I love doing this. I love doing it with you. Everybody, thank you so much. We will be back. We're going to see when the lines come out. Hopefully we can get a show in for you tomorrow, previewing the Saturday slate. But I will let you know, so stay tuned on my Twitter. I will keep it informed for you guys. Best of luck this weekend. Let's get some winners.